Welcome to Module 4, Implications of Poor Quality Data. This is the last module of the course, and we take a look at the implications of low quality data, the ethical use of data, and the impacts they can have on organisations, consumers, and humans. According to research analyst firm Gartner, as many as 40% of all business initiatives fail due to poor quality data. This is because poor quality data may have been used to support business cases for funding initiatives, and subsequently the project fails to deliver the business outcomes identified. Other business impacts of poor quality data may include financial impacts such as increased operating costs, decreased revenue and loss of income, impacts to productivity caused by delays in data availability, hidden costs of data repair and decreased output, impacts to brand and reputation driven by dissatisfied customers, employees and suppliers, potential for regulatory fines for breaching regulatory and legal obligations, and worst case scenario, serious patient harm causing death. As you can see, even the simplest data quality mistakes can have a significant cascading effect. Fixing data costs us all. Data collected by an organisation is the only permanent business asset. It serves as a record of not only what is occurring today, but what has occurred in the past. It will outlive the people, systems and processes that collected it. However, putting a price tag on data is challenging, as it needs to reflect not only the cost of the product or service, but the whole value chain. The cost of designs, of salary and wages, of packaging and promotional material, to name only a few. But there is also a cost associated with fixing data. According to Professor Tom Redman, the cost of fixing data can be as high as 20% of revenue. Data quality costs can be categorized by what can be seen versus what is hidden. Consider the diagram above. Direct costs are those necessary to produce the product or service. For example, the cost of design, materials, and tools required to produce the product or service, and the cost of salary and wages of the people directly involved in production. These are all necessary costs. Hidden costs are those required to deliver the product or service. These include marketing, promotion, and distribution costs. In terms of the salary and wages of the person fixing data, having to fix data quality issues is also a hidden cost. One of the most important kinds of data is data about you. Increasingly, organisations are wanting more and more human data, that is, information in the form of characteristics about you. For the most part, the information is used to provide you with products and services that you have purchased or requested. Some organisations, for example banking and insurance, use collected information to tailor their products and services to your needs and budget, while offering you an additional products and services that you may like. Organised crime often use stealth tactics to attempt to steal your information, such as bank accounts and passwords, or your personal characteristics in order. These risks are real, and you should be cautious when responding to requests for your information, particularly over the phone or via any form of social media. To try and combat these increasing threats globally, there is a movement to put tighter restrictions and controls on collection of personal data, your data. While there is no global standard, the European Union of countries is leading the way with their General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. And many other countries are implementing similar versions. In Australia, we operate under the Privacy Act. These laws establish your rights to protect your data, and although structured slightly different, offer a similar set of principles previously defined by the OECD. The first one is the collection limitation principle. There should be limits to the collection of personal data, and any such data should be obtained by lawful and fair means, and where appropriate, with the knowledge and consent of the data subject, i.e. you. Data quality principle. Personal data should be relevant to the purposes for which they are to be used, and to the extent necessary for the purposes should be accurate, complete, and kept up to date. Purpose specification principle. The purpose for which personal data is collected should be specified not later than the time of data collection, and the subsequent use limited to the fulfillment of those purposes. Use limitation principle. Personal data should not be disclosed, made available, or otherwise used for purposes other than those specified, except A. with the consent of the data subject, i.e. you, or by the authority of law. Security safeguards principle. Personal data should be protected by reasonable security safeguards against such risks as loss or unauthorized access, destruction, use, modification, or disclosure of data. Openness principle. There should be a general policy of openness about developments, practices, and policies with respect to personal data. Means should be readily available of establishing the existence and nature of personal data and the main purposes for their use. Individual participation principle. Individuals should have the right to obtain any data that may be held about them in a reasonable time frame and reasonable cost. If the organisation refuses to provide them data, then it needs to explain why. Individuals should also have the right to have their data corrected. Accountability principle. A data controller should be accountable for complying with measures that give effect to the principle stated above. The specification defines a data controller as being a party who, according to national law, is competent to decide about the contents and use of personal data, regardless of whether or not such data is collected, stored, processed, or disseminated by that party or an agent on its behalf. Essentially, this means that anyone who uses personal data for any purpose is accountable for its appropriate use. Data breaches. When personal or sensitive data is accidentally or purposefully lost, stolen, or distributed to unauthorized persons or organizations, this may constitute a data breach. Depending on the size of the breach and the data affected, the data breach may be reportable to the Australian Government, and there are large personal and company fines that can be applied. For this reason, it is very important to make sure that all data is collected, stored, and used securely and appropriately, and only people who have access to the data should access it. Some examples of data breaches include faxing a report containing people's personal details and medical information on a used car lot, and losing a memory stick containing customer data that is not protected or encrypted. So what can you do? There are some simple actions you can take each day to help reduce the likelihood of a data breach. 1. Consider what data you use on a daily basis. Do you need personal data to do your job? If so, then it's perfectly fine. Avoid sending personal or sensitive data via email. Emailing personal and sensitive data is one of the most common ways a data breach can occur, simply because it's easy to put the wrong recipient on it. Also, once you have sent the email, you can't control what happens to the data. If you find yourself having to email personal data, then consider if there are any other ways, without creating too much work, to share this data. This is a good discussion topic and an excellent item to add to your data issue register. If email is your only option, then attach the data in a document or spreadsheet and put a password on it. Don't include the password in the email. Instead, SMS or ring the recipient and tell them the password in person. If you're going to send a fax, check the fax number before you send it and make sure it's still current. Store data securely. Avoid storing personal and sensitive data on your desktop or laptop computers. If you do store data on these computers, make sure you know who has access to it. Your local IT team should be able to assist with securing data. So in summary, what does this mean for you? If you give your personal information to another person, you want to be assured that they will treat it with the proper respect. In the same way, if you are collecting personal data from someone else, then you are obligated to return the favour and treat their data with respect. Data ethics is simply summarised as doing the right thing with data. In summary, poor data quality can have far-reaching impacts, which are mostly preventable. Fixing data after the event is expensive and a wasteful use of resources. You're much better off trying to find and fix the root cause in the source system. Fixing data is a hidden cost that detracts workers from their jobs. Data ethics is ensuring that the use of personal and sensitive data is appropriate, and personal and sensitive data collection and use must benefit the person.